Joining me here today from More, Janet Tonner, who is president of DDTV, and Misty Dragano of First Degree. And I'm Nick Ellinger, I'm More's Chief Brand Officer. And without further ado, the big reason we wanted to have this webinar is looking at the digital ad market. You have the digital duopoly, as they talk about it, Facebook and Google. That is most of the ad market. Amazon is coming up the rear into a strong third place that continues to grow. And what you have in the blue, everything else is gradually diminishing. And so you're stuck in this place where in order to talk to your constituents, people who would love to hear from you on Facebook, Pinterest, all of those social networks, through search, things like that, and now through products, through Amazon, if you want to talk to any of those audiences, you must pay the toll. And so what we wanted to do here today is talk about a few ways that you can, in some cases, use those mechanisms, but in every case, bring people to you to donate, to sign up so that you get their information and they're part of your data ecosystem, not through someone else's data ecosystem. So to start off, Janet's going to talk to us a little bit about connected TV.
Great, thanks, Nick. So connected TV, let's talk about why it's important in today's market. And really, this is no surprise, right? The fragmentation of the media landscape is dramatic. And I like this example because it shows you back in 1975 when we're watching linear TV, the #1 rated show was All in the Family. And in any given night when it was airing, it would have roughly 30 million viewers. Today, and this is actually 2017, so it's less if you even go forward, the #1 rated primetime show is Big Bang Theory. And you can see that that now only generates about 11 million viewers in any particular episode. So there's just so many options for folks to watch. And really, content is king. They're following the content, and more are adding to their linear television landscape with Amazon and Netflix and all of the others. So let's take a look at some of the numbers. This is a recently released Nielsen set of information. It just came out of their streaming meter analysis from July. And so obviously the COVID bump is impacting these numbers, but what they're saying is of all of the time that people watch TV, 25% of it is now spent streaming. So you're not watching linear television, you're watching some kind of streaming platform. And that's an increase of over 56% compared to last year. And you can take a look here at the second circle graph where you can see that the majority of that is Netflix. Unfortunately, Netflix is not ad supported. YouTube, which is, Hulu, which is, Amazon, which is, Disney Plus, which is, and then this other group that we're gonna talk a little bit about. But you can see this, so this is a growing platform and opportunity for all of us to start testing into. So who is responsible for this big increase? And what Nielsen is saying is that actually the biggest jump of streaming video share is those 55 and older. And while that's great for fundraising, is of course, as we all know, those are typically the more generous generations. They give higher average gifts. They're typically more loyal. They're more likely to become a sustainer. So this growth in streaming is coming from the market and target market we absolutely want to get to. So what is connected television? It really refers to any television or device that can be connected to the internet where you can watch video. And you can see here the examples. Obviously, we're all pretty much familiar with most of these. Smart televisions is a big one. Roku is one platform that actually comes pre-programmed, I think now on 1 in 2 smart television, 1 out of every 2 smart televisions. So it comes with your television. You can see these other platforms, obviously Xbox, PlayStation, Chromecast, Apple TV, and so forth. So all ways to watch video streaming services through your television. So let's talk about advertising on connected television. In a lot of ways, it's very different than the way we would buy on linear television. When we're buying linear television ads, we're selecting a particular network. So we say, I want to be on CNN, and we're going to place time in a certain day part on CNN. Connected TV is you're not selecting networks, you're selecting individuals who share characteristics. So it turns this mass medium into a very targeted one. You can select on a large variety of demographics. Most all of these platforms are using some third-party compiler, whether it's Axion or Experian. And so they have tacked on to all of the folks who belong to their platform. So if you imagine I sign up for Hulu, and right, Hulu now knows my name and address, and because I pay for it, they then go look them up on a big compiler and get all of this other information about me. And so they can use that to target. And of course, they know where I live, so we can geo-target as well if you're looking to support a particular event or some kind of local campaign. Some newer technology is coming along, and most are getting ready to offer this, is to actually target to a name and address file. So you could provide a file of your lapsed donors, and we could target them with a video ad specifically. There is an additional cost for this because there's only really two services that have this. One is an Axiom product called LiveRamp, and Experian has one as well. So you have to pay not only to have your file looked up, but then you have to then pay to place the ad. But still, it might be worth it. It certainly might be worth some testing. So most of those expect to have that up and running before Q4. The beauty of connected TV is that the ads are non-skippable. Right? We're not talking about the folks who pay for Hulu Extra where you don't pay for ads. This is all ad supported, and they can't skip them. The research suggests because there are fewer ads and shorter ad breaks that there is actually better ad recall for those who watch it than if you are watching linear television and you get many commercials within your break. Of course, connected TV is the only way to reach cord cutters, and that's a segment that's growing rapidly, even among that 55+ audience. The other beauty is because this is really, in a sense, a digital medium, that I can, I know exactly who I'm targeting, or the platform knows exactly who they're targeting with an ad. They can follow that up immediately or after the fact with a display ad on another device. So, right, mostly they can track you through your devices. They know you're watching television at the same time. The phone in your hand can be receiving a display ad or some other ad as well. And then because they know you, they can also follow you around for a while until you actually make the you take the action that we're asking of you. The other beauty is, unlike DRTV, where you absolutely need a call center, maybe about half of your response or more is going to come in on the phone lines, there are very few viewers who actually call. So you really don't even need to have a phone number on these ads. It's really about clicking through or going to visit a website. On the other hand, there's a few cons today. The maximum ad length on almost all of these platforms is 30 seconds. So the video, you have much less time to tell your story, which is why we're really excited about that, potentially tapping those lapsed donors, because they're already familiar with your organization. So you just need to make the case of why they need to come back to you. The other thing that we talk about when we're talking about direct response TV is that it's got this wonderful halo effect. Because you're being out there and millions upon millions of people are seeing your ads as they watch television. Because this is a targeted audience versus a mass audience, that halo effect still happens, but to a lesser degree. The other piece is that today it does not really drive immediate transactions. This is going to build top of funnel awareness and site visits. It's not necessarily going to have that immediate transaction donation. So you are going to need to be able to retarget these folks on your own once they come to your site. But know that it has been shown to improve some brand awareness and certainly some event awareness for local events. and again, generate that traffic. But when you're comparing it to DRTV, what we found is roughly a cost per 1,000 viewers is around $20 to $25. And that's even with some targeting. So because as you add targeting criteria, the price can increase. Linear television, I can get 1,000 viewers for maybe $8 to $10 to $12 max. So when you think about it from a fundraising perspective, an immediate response, I would need 2 to 3 times the response to generate the same ROI for DRTV. And to date, in our testing, that has not yet been achieved. I think over time it will get there. But for those of you who, this isn't a comparison to DRTV, this is, I just want to test something new. I think this could be a great opportunity to test this market, especially in Q4 when we're expecting a lot of great viewership.
And what I hear you say is that it should be a part of a larger campaign. It doesn't stand on its own like some other campaigns might.
Correct, correct.
We do have a question come in. How has viewership changed under COVID-19, and does that affect what these ad rates are and both how people are watching and how we're paying for these things?
Yes, so absolutely, COVID has dramatically increased both linear television and streaming, and actually probably more so even on the streaming side. And honestly, what Nielsen is starting to see is that some of the linear television viewership is starting to come back a little bit more towards normal, whereas the streaming has not. It's still raised. What we would suggest if you were interested in buying is, so there's a couple of ways you can actually buy these programs. You could go direct to Roku, for example, and place a buy there. You could go direct to Hulu and place a buy there. You can go direct to Disney Plus and place a buy. But we have found that you actually get more for your money if you go to an aggregator. So an aggregator can place across all of those things. They have insight into all of those individuals watching. And so we have found an aggregator to be a better mechanism, to, especially for testing, for launching into this platform. The beauty about an aggregator is they've locked in inventory. So even though we know political ads are going to go, especially on on streaming TV, are going to be a big player this year. They have locked in space and inventory at reasonable rates for nonprofits and their other commercial advertisers. So you shouldn't expect it to be dramatically more expensive right now because of the political market or the viewership. They really are charging, because they want more people to do this, they haven't really adjusted rates upward at this point. They're hungry.
So that's good to hear. So this may become an opportunity for more folks where you can get same number of eyeballs, same price at the same time as the value of those folks is going up, with 50 plus folks coming over into the medium.
Exactly.
Okay. So an example that we have of working with connected TV is with disabled American veterans. So they ran 2 different ads last year, December 20th to December 31st, at the height of that giving season. To give you an idea of some of the stats around this, there were 2.8 million impressions, and it was about 50-50 between video spots and audience expansion digital ads. So you're looking at Google, for example, you see a display ad, you click on it or hover over it, and it expands out into a video. So really bridging that line between this is TV versus this is digital. They found 5,000 verified visits, a lot of that coming from those expanded out digital ads, and 117 view-through conversions. So people who clicked through it and actually became constituents, donated, or took some other action where they signed on the line that is dotted. The creative in those made a huge difference. So the click-through on Bob was 0.04%, and the click-through on Nick, just because Nick is clearly going to be better, I mean, it's Nick, is 0.25%.
There's a baby in the spot.
So a 6 times difference in these creative treatments. And we actually had some neurolab studies that tended to indicate that NICS was going to be a very positive spot, similar to what DAV does in DRTV. There was a slightly higher conversion for visit rate off of Bob, but when you have 6 times the click-through rate on your ad, you gravitate towards that. Looking at the data from that, we found that the visits that could be directly tied to the ad were highly correlated with overall web traffic to DAV. And so we're finding that that is a significant driver of web traffic, bringing people out of these other means, taking them out of Disney Plus, taking them out of Gmail, bringing them to the site, and getting them to engage. Those are highly correlated instances. And specifically on GivingTuesday, we found a jump up. There were 13,000 homepage visits. 900 of them had a unique donation from the light box that was on the homepage. I'm sorry, that was the form views. 760 of them actually gave the gift. So your conversion rate's about 84% at that point. A lot of that was driven by disconnected TV and these sorts of means. So you saw branded keyword searches going up, search gifts going up. So even if someone didn't take action from the, say, Disney Plus ad, they went to their phone, they went online, and they took an action surrounding that effort. And so the number of new donors coming in from search increased 23%, and that's year over year. So it's a good way of controlling for, well, of course, it's GivingTuesday. Everyone's going to be searching for DAV at that time. This is controlling for that by looking at year over year impact. And so you can see a substantial bump during those times of the year that people are most likely to be given. So the lessons that we took from this is that it tends to be indirect rather than direct revenue. When you're watching TV, it's much harder to click on an ad, but rather you're going to some other device to make that. And then we're taking on a significant amount of testing for DAV and connected TV and in those enhanced digital video opportunities. Outside of end of year, we're testing additional stories. When you see a 6 times click-through rate in one ad versus the other, you know that there's opportunity in those stories. And they're really trying to build a campaign around victories for veterans. How do we create additional victories for veterans, and how do we create a campaign that comes out of that that runs across the entire year? So that's a quick look at connected TV. Again, we welcome any questions that you have in the Q&A section, any comments you have in the chat section. Happy to talk results. And then Misty, can you talk a little bit about organic and boosted social?
I can. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. So we're going to talk a little bit about, you know, a fun way to engage social media users during a very trying time, which is our Mad World campaign. So think about what Mothers Against Drunk Driving was faced with in March, April, May of 2020. People were home, they weren't driving, bars were closed, everybody was on lockdown. So from a mission perspective, MAD was doing well. There is absolutely data that shows that during that time period, there were fewer drunk driving accidents, fewer fatalities on the roads, because there were simply less people out and not having the ability to be out and socializing like we had in the past. Unfortunately, that meant that they were also less relevant. But that didn't mean that their mission stopped outside of reducing the accidents and fatalities. Victims and survivors still needed support. They were still being very proactive in helping to pass legislation, both really at that local level. They were still supporting law enforcement and all of the other programmatic efforts that they had to do. And unlike many of the other nonprofits during that time who saw a spike and increased interest in their mission and support from donors, when you look at how MAD is structured, a quarter of their funding comes from in-person victim impact panels, which is when offenders have to go into a course that is run by MAD to understand the impacts of their decisions. and pay for those classes. So those were all gone. And a lot of the other components of their fundraising came from walks and other event type activities. So they were in this real predicament where they were, on one hand, succeeding on their mission to eliminate drunk driving. They were really struggling to stay relevant at a time when they really needed to be increasing their donations because a large part of their funding was disappearing during this time. So it was a challenge that was presented to us. And Nick, if you want to move on to the next page. So we also thought, you know, in doing that, how do we embrace what's going on, try to stay relevant, and pull people out of a little bit of the funk that they were all feeling? Like, you can't talk to people who are struggling with just getting by, teaching their kids at home, wondering whether they're going to have a job or not, and then still try to make your mission relevant when you're talking about an issue like drunk driving. So we took a little bit of a spin on it. And, you know, it was a pretty mad world out there. Today, we're all feeling pretty comfortable with working from home. Our kids are schooling from home. But if you think about how we all felt back in March and April, it was chaos. It was a mad world around the globe. And so we created a campaign called Mad World, took a little bit of the iceberg challenge and turned it into a social media challenge to have people share what their mad world looked like right now and encourage others to do the same. So we engaged local media influencers, we engaged corporate partners for MAD, we engaged their agencies, some of the sports teams around the country, some of their celebrity organizations that they work with, and really just to ask the world to share how they were feeling in this mad world, and while doing so, come and learn and support MAD as well. If you want to turn on to the next slide, Nick. So the goal there was, well, this, you know, to pull people out of social media, and more before that, it was just to make them relevant and build awareness and to engage supporters. We also spent a lot of time talking about how this is really going to be helpful for their employees and their staff and their victims that they and the families that they were supporting from an emotional support, and it was helping everybody try to adapt to the new normal. This was my favorite with our little dog who was doing it. So to launch the campaign, we really built out a full suite of assets. MAD is an organization, like many other nonprofits, have a pretty extensive field structure. So we developed a toolkit for them that had sample social media posts, all the tags that they needed, frames to put around their graphics so that we could build the MAD world branding into the imagery. We really made it trackable by connecting the name and the hashtag, and then just worked with all of their partners through agencies, corporations. Like I mentioned earlier, we launched through organic social, we launched through boosted social, and really just put a full court press out there to spread the word and bring a little levity into the situation that people were facing, that we're all kind of collectively feeling and so exhibiting, and try to again make their brand a little bit relevant. You want to go on to the next page? All the action was driven back to a donation page. Again, that brought it all home. From, you know, going into this, what we really wanted to set down and determine were what are our metrics of success. Clearly, fundraising was a component of it. And, you know, within the first couple of days of launching, we had several $1,000s of trackable donations. But like I mentioned, there was more to it than just fundraising. It was to boost employee morale, to be relevant, and to kind of bubble up and to help that organic content engagement. In lessons learned, this really was, I think, a big key to the success of this was we made it really, really easy for it to get started through our partners, through our employees, and other organizations. So in that toolkit, we gave a bunch of sampled social media posts. We made sure that they had all the tags that they needed. We kept them really simple and back to the mission. Had a lot of imagery that they could pull from and wrap around it. Additional lessons that we learned was having that integrated campaign across all social media platforms really helped get it going. We made it very simple. And this is just, I wanted to really share some of the different creative that we saw that made everyone giggle as they went through and watched this. You want to go on to the next page, Nick? Oh, so back up. Sorry about that. Again, this was the takeaways were here was trying to stay relevant in a time when we were completely irrelevant and bring a little levity to a very serious, trying time. So I'll pause before we go on to the petitions and answer any questions you may have.
And MAD can be a very serious mission. I worked at MAD for 13 years, so it's a cause that's near and dear to my heart. And so during this time when part of MAD's mission is to serve those who have been impacted by this violent crime. And so to inject some levity into this, to bring that lightness to people that they serve, really became a bit of mission outreach in addition to fundraising outreach. But for this, they were able to bring people off of these social platforms where they'd normally have to advertise, allow people to spread the message, and then get people to donate, get people to sign up for the newsletter, and engage in the mission for the long term.
Yeah, and Nick, I think you hit on a really salient point, which was when we first came up with this idea, we really did talk internally about making sure that the levity would be received positively by those that they support, the families and the victims who have gone through the horrific situation. So that was very, very much top of mind. And to your point, we all felt and had some conversations with some families before we even launched it that, yeah, that's exactly the type of message that they needed right now, to know that we were still there to care and support the organization or for the individual.
One of the things that is, there are few silver linings in this time, but one of them is we're getting to see each other at our most real, and becoming more accepting of, oh yeah, there are kid sounds in the background because people have kids and dogs and a life. And so embracing that, I think, is a really positive thing.
Any questions? All right, well, we'll move on then.
Okay. Looking at petitions, this is something that those of you who have been involved in direct response for a number of years know that this is a standby for our advocacy organizations. You know, it's mail a petition as the bounce back. You always get you often get an increased response. It helps engage people in the mission beyond their donation. But our thought is that petitions and pledges can go beyond that type of bounce back environment and really help engage people as a low cost to them and to you way of getting involved in a mission. So this is an example from Disabled American Veterans. We want to make sure that it's not just legislative or advocacy, it's not just offline, that this can be a lead generating activity. So Disabled American Veterans, one of their primary times of the year to focus on their mission is during May and in the lead up to Memorial Day. And so they did some very effective ads and boosted posts on Facebook where they were looking at, can you join DAV in a moment of silence? Is that something that we can do virtually? And will you make a pledge, in this case, not a full-on petition, but a pledge to join us in remembrance? And then the other ad had a video that went along with it to honor the heroes that we've lost. And for DAV, it's helping those who are still with us. So this was a campaign that ran across donor and acquisition. And I think that's a critical component that you saw of Misty's presentation, of Janet's presentation. It's not one or the other, it's both and. It's reaching out to people that you know already and bringing new people into the organization in Connected TV in some of our outreach efforts through social and in petitions and other activities. So they did broad Facebook donor acquisition where they're going out after interest groups. They're doing boosted social posts so that those who may follow but they may not have access to outside of that Facebook walled garden, to get their existing followers enlisted, and they emailed out to their existing supporters. And you can see that email at right, where this was this particular one that you see is signing the pledge. You do see the give now in the upper right, but that is the only mention of giving. And one of the things that you'll see on this campaign is that you don't need to have that ask up front in order to make an impact. So the total results off of this campaign, almost 10,000 pledges. That was a 32% year-over-year increase. As you can see at right, about half of those were from Facebook, another 37% were from their email, and 14% were from boosted posts that were non-organic Facebook. Of those, about 3,800 were new to file, so they are bringing new people into the organization, which is great to see. And this half that comes from Facebook was more than double what they had pledgers from previous years. Now, I teased this just a moment ago. The email raised over $14,000 with no ask in the email. More than $9,000 was from their existing dues paying members. So for DAV, you can become a member if you have been injured in the line of duty. And for those veterans who can't afford a membership fee, they allow for other ways of getting into the organization, so no one's turned away for inability to pay, but they do have a membership fee. Those members often feel like they've already paid their dues twice, as you might guess. So the fact that they're raising money from those folks over and above their existing gift is really a sight to see. And not only that, but the pledge email worked better than every other appeal that they had sent for the month combined. And the reason was that it was after the pledge, the ask was. And so you made the pledge, then they asked you for your gift at that point. And so there's this idea from the behavioral science literature that we're all looking for consistency. One of the more famous examples from Cialdini in his book was that they asked people, would you put this hideous sign up in your yard to encourage traffic safety? And as you might guess, people did not really take up the hideous sign ask. But when you asked people to first display a small placard in their front window encouraging traffic safety, and then asked those people if they would put a hideous sign up in the yard, there was a 400% increase in the number of people who put out the hideous sign. And it was because people already assumed, I am a person who does things like this for traffic safety. And so the additional ask seems like a matter of degree rather than a change in kind. And so, yes, I'm a person like this, I will put a sign out. In this case, it's, I've made the pledge to help our veterans, both those who've, to honor those who have been lost and to help those who are still with us who need our help. I've made that pledge. Now I'm being asked to support that mission. Clearly, I'm a person who does things like this. And so that is a highly successful campaign for DAV and one that they look to be building on in future years. So what we always try to do in these webinars is save a decent amount of time for questions and answers. So we are at that point. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and be ready to answer any questions that you might have. While we're getting those questions in, I will do the traditional vamping while we're waiting for that to come in. And so for those of you who are joining this webinar, we do have 2 additional webinars coming up. The one is coming up in a week from Monday, featuring Janet with the wonderful title, So You Think You Want to Do DRTV? You've heard her pitch on Connected TV and that very particular look at that aspect of things where you're trying to drive top of the funnel awareness, drive website visits, drive engagement with people who are already among you. DRTV is a whole nother kettle of fish because you're going to a broader audience. That broader audience, as she alluded to earlier, can lift all boats. there are additional costs, and there are far additional benefits. So if you'll join us a week from Monday. And then in 4 weeks, Doug Kasmierek, who is Moore's Chief Data Officer, will be launching a webinar called Death to Buckets, where we look at the segmentation. And the thesis is that we talk about the leaky bucket and how we're not retaining these donors. And perhaps the problem with the bucket is that it's a bucket, not that it's leaky, that we keep trying to put donors into these categories that don't necessarily make sense for them. And so we'll be talking about a new way forward in that type of data revolution. So I will put links to both of those in the post-webinar email where we send you these slides and where we send the video as soon as that is rendered. Janet, Misty, anything that you'd like to share with the group?
I don't think so, not that I can think of right now.
Okay. Since we have some shy questioners, do you each mind sharing your email addresses so that people can follow up with you after this? So Janet?
Sure. Yeah, it's jtonner, Tonner, at directdonortv.com.
And then mine is mdragano, MDRAGANO, at firstdegree.com. But let me spell that. It's the number 1, letter ST, and then the word degree. So it's 1STDEGREE.com.
Okay. And I'm Nick Ellinger at nellinger at mooredmgroup.com. That's mooredmgroup.com. I almost misspelled the group part of that for some reason. I don't actually know any of this stuff, but I'm happy to put you in touch with the people who do know this stuff.